Welcome to Derailed Trains of Thought. Welcome to Derailed Trains of Thought. My name is Timothy Deal, aka Timoteo.
And this is Nick Hayden, aka Nikolai Borshevsky.
And that's all we got.
Yeah.
Okay, not really. Welcome. This is a podcast devoted to writing, filmmaking, and everything in between. Basically, this is kind of a storytelling podcast that Nick and I, when we get into conversations, it can go anywhere, hence Derailed Trains of Thought.
Which is stolen from a website, and was stolen from a writing group, and was stolen from, I don't know, I think it was a blog at one point too.
Was it? I knew about the forums.
Oh, it was a film company too, remember?
Oh yeah, that's true. So yeah, rich history behind the Derailed Trains of Thought legacy. We'll be talking a bit about writing, since again that's Derailed Trains of Thought kind of legacy again, and we'll talk a bit about filming because I'm currently in film school. So I'll introduce myself a little bit more for those who don't know me. Again, my name is Tim Deal, and I'm in film school right now at Regent University, where I'm pursuing a master's degree in cinema television with an emphasis in editing. So nonlinear editing is kind of my specialty, but before I had even thought about a film career, I was always interested in writing and storytelling in general. So that's kind of where Nick and I bonded. And Nick, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
I'm Nick Hayden, and let's see. I've been writing stories for a long time. I thought I was going to be a math teacher. Decided not to be a math teacher, but to be a writer. Written 2 books that are published, about 2 or 3 more that need to be published. I make my money as a bookkeeper, and I always have some sort of crazy idea that I want to write, but doesn't necessarily get done.
A lot of ideas.
Yeah, Tim's heard plenty of those. You guys will probably hear more than you would like.
And talk about your current website a little bit.
Oh yeah, I have a website. It's a website. I've been doing the serialized novels on my website. It's nickhayden.digitalnovelist.com. Over about the course of a year and a half, I published a book called A Girl Called Snort, about this girl who's born with a pig's face. She goes on an adventure to find a human face. Basically 3 installments a week for about a year and a half, and it got finished up just a couple months ago. And currently there's a story called The Story Project, which Tim and I and my wife and others worked on. And we're posting
Highly
that.
recommend.
Highly recommend. It starts a little slow, but it ends up very, very good.
Basically, the Story Project was about a group of writers who lived all in one mansion, and they wrote journals about what happened to them. So basically, it's a collection of fictional blogs or journals.
Yeah, I think,
and they all interrelate.
I think we have about 13 characters who write fictional blogs at one point in the story.
Yeah,
and
it's quite a group.
And they're very interesting. They're great characters. There's a great ending to the whole thing. Some good surprises.
We were really happy with the way it turned out, but it does start slow. It was a 2-year project, and so the first few months we were trying to figure out what was going on exactly.
Yeah, we wrote it in real time. There wasn't really much editing. We just kind of, as it happened, we wrote it. So there was some planning, but really not that much.
If you can't tell, we're really proud of it.
Go read it.
This is a nice time to get into it now. If you want to do the serialized format, it's in March now, and there's more characters, and yeah, again, highly recommend it.
And hopefully there'll be a new website soon, but we'll tell you that when it happens.
Yes. All right, so that's a little bit more about us, and so with that said, let's dig in here. Let's go to story school.
All right.
All right, it's always important to brush up on your storytelling craft, so in this segment, Nick and I discuss a concept of writing and or filmmaking based on our own experience. And today's topic is
Endings.
this is our first podcast. We're talking about endings. So, yeah, that's the way we work. Nick, this is you. I'm gonna hand the mic over to you in this bit because you've recently finished or finishing a big project or an old project.
Yeah, I actually suggested this idea because I'm finishing a novel called The Squire, which I began, I think, in '03. It's been sitting on my desk for a long, long time, and I finally finished it. I actually just last week wrote the last chapter, and endings kind of freak me out because I'm good at starting stories. I'm good at keeping them going. I'm good at cliffhangers, or at least I think I am. But ending a story, you may have to make it feel closed without giving too nice of an ending. People want happy endings, or I like happy endings, but you don't want to make it too happy, too over the top per se. But you don't want to make it so that there has to be a sequel either. So trying to balance all these, and I have like 15 characters,
Which is actually pretty common for you.
which is actually very common for me. There's only one main character, and he gets his ending pretty easy, and I've always known his ending. The other ones I don't want to give real nice endings to, be they're all sub characters, but they need to have some sort of closure. Be they all have kind of their own problems, and my hope is I have this one chapter where they're all doing the crazy battle going on, and hopefully they all get a sense of at least how they've grown. We'll see. I've been typing up. I wrote the ending in the notebook. I thought I needed an epilogue. Cut the epilogue. I'm typing it up right now, and I think I'll probably spend a lot of time reading the last 3 chapters and seeing if I hit everything with the right notes.
Nice, because most of the book was actually finished for a long time, and just the ending is actually fairly new.
Yeah, the ending, I think it kept me from finishing the book for a long time. Yeah, because I was within 4 chapters of the end for the last 3-4 years, I think. Just kept getting sidetracked or not wanting to buckle down and end the thing.
That's an intimidating end, I guess.
Well, I think an ending needs both a physical ending and an emotional ending. That you need,
Mhm.
the battle is won or something like that. But then you want the characters to feel like something happened to them. Star Wars, the Death Star blows up, that's the end. But you also have this, the ceremony that makes you feel like, oh wait, they're all happy and they're all friends and Han Solo came back and all this other kind of emotional closure.
I heard that thing about was it Gary Kurtz, the Star Wars producer who actually wanted the Return of the Jedi to end with Han Solo dying at
Oh
some
yeah.
point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like, I can see why people don't care for the teddy bear Ewoks, but I much prefer Star Wars as a space fantasy and then as hardcore science fiction. As awesome as the darkness of Empire Strikes Back is, personally, I'm a lot happier with the way the original trilogy ended.
I have to agree there actually because well, I'm a sucker for happy endings. And that's a great one. I mean, you have basically half the movie's a giant battle. If it ended with a giant battle on this, space fantasy, and then like one character died and one walked away. I mean, I think Luke was supposed to kind of walk into the sunset like some old Western hero. It probably would have been more artsy in some ways, but I don't think it would have been as well near as much fun.
In a sense, it wouldn't really have held as true to the kind of legends that he was working with. He was working off a lot of archetypes with Star Wars. The wizard, the kid who has to save the day, and I think it's totally fine for it to have more of a fairy tale ending than a strictly realistic one.
I actually, I was thinking about this when we decided endings was going to be the theme of this podcast. That um, endings are kind of built into our nature. I think people like happy endings because they feel like good characters should have good endings.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a hero, you want him to get the girl and be happy and live happily ever after because it's justice for a good guy to have a good ending. A bad guy should die horrible deaths.
Mm-hmm. And I think that appeals to. There's a part of us, and at least a part of me, that I feel that sometimes, not always, but sometimes I want more lighthearted stories, not to show me life as it is, not completely, but life as it more like how it should be.
I think that's actually one of the main at least for me, one of the main goals of writing,
Hmm.
to show how the world should be and not necessarily how it is. We get plenty of how it is.
Yeah,
So,
there's all kinds of people that want to talk about the realism. But showing characters who act like we would want to act in a certain situation, to me, oftentimes means a lot more than showing someone who would act just like, a real someone you'd read from in the headlines.
and you're much more likely to be courageous and daring and truthful and all these other things if all the stories you surround yourself with, say this is a good thing to do.
Hmm.
I was thinking of this. I love old stories. In old stories, there's always, in fantasies and myths, folklore, there's always magic. But almost one of the most powerful magics in these old myths is just making a promise. You can't break a promise in a story.
Mm.
It's impossible. But,
Yeah.
in real life, it's like breathing to break a promise. But it shows a completely different way of looking at the world. And I was going to mention this earlier. I think we want happy endings, but at the same time, some of us want sad endings or understand sad endings because we understand the world's messed up.
Yeah.
And so I can understand both, and I've written sad endings. What was that flash fiction I wrote recently, Dinner at Twilight,
Which is very dark.
which is very dark. I mean,
Yeah.
I write dark stuff also, but I don't
Yeah.
know that's the only thing worth writing.
Well, and it really does depend on your story at large. You and I and some listeners might vehemently disagree with us, but I know you and I really appreciated the ending to Lost.
Yes.
Now that was granted that we had kind of an understanding eventually that the show wasn't quite what people wanted it to be, and it didn't wrap up everything. But in the context of the world and especially the world view it had, it really fit. Even though everything didn't turn out hunky dory, it I think it really fit the story more than some people would give it credit for.
Well, I agree, and actually, occasionally I still think about the ending, and I'll take people's criticisms and say, okay, let's look at that and see if that's valid or not. Like people say, all the last season they just ran around the island not doing anything, which
Hmm.
is true. Um, but then I think, well, there's got to be a purpose for that. I you know, I always go with that. The writer has a purpose for doing what they do. And then if I can't find it, then I say they're just horrible writers. But I think it's interesting. Season 5 is almost completely plot,
Mm.
like hardcore plot. Season 6 is really they're almost solely for, except near the end, the sideways. It's a character study almost,
Hmm.
almost like in an eternal sense, asking that question: can people really change, or are they always going to do the same thing over and over again? And I think in that context, the ending is particularly good.
Well, let me pose a question for you
Yes.
this way. Do you think people would have accepted it more if they had done it a little more the other way around, where season 5 had been a bit more of a character study, and then season 6, the last one, it would have been all about the crazy plot things winding up?
I do think it would go better because you have to admit, doing what they did in season 6 is very untraditional. And personally, I think very gutsy. And I
To say the
like the
least.
fact that they kept trying different sorts of things. But yeah, it's not endings, whether they work or not, largely depend on expectations also. And
Very true.
I think, especially since you didn't know what the sideways were until the end, I don't think the expectations could ever match up to what the writers thought was the ending.
Hmm.
Um,
I think there was some of us, and I kind of was in this boat for a while, that we kind of expected that at some point in the last season we would kind of understand what everything was about, and it would be less about mysteries and more about, okay, how are we going to handle this big crisis or something like that. How is now that we know what's going on, how's it going to wind up?
yeah.
Um, and Lost, instead of doing that, Lost held true to its mysterious nature until the bitter end.
Now you can
And
you can argue that maybe they should have answered more stuff, and I could agree with you maybe. I I don't like your second guess writers per se. because they've probably talked about a lot more than we have, being the critics.
Yeah.
And they did the show.
Yeah, exactly. That, and quick side
Yeah.
tangent. I've mentioned this before, but I love to you, but I love to vent about it. Um, People need to give writers more credit because, again, yeah, like you said, they have created the world. They have spent so much time working through the parameters. It's not like they just throw something out there and say, "Well, that's what we wanted to do, so suck it." Which is a lot of times what the armchair critics would say,
No,
but it's so much more than that.
yeah, and I agree with you. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, no problem.
Not that writers don't make mistakes, but I think many times it's just I think it's perceived expectation sometimes. Sometimes the writers had a completely different desire what they wanted to get done.
Hmm.
For instance, one of my personal peeves in season 6 is that they never gave us a real sense of danger of uh, Man in Black Locke getting off the island. They said everything was going to end,
Yeah.
but was it really going to end? But then I was thinking, I read this great theory that season 6 is basically season 2 all over again with the hatch. And they kept saying that if you didn't press the button, the world was going to end. And we never had any proof it was going to end.
Mm.
And they did the same thing again, basically, in a very nice parallelism, or if you want to be cynical, a nice copying themselves. So I do think, in my character study theory, is that season 6 is also not just about the character, but the character of the island. People universally, well, not universally, many people hated Across the Sea. I thought it was a fabulous episode. And I think it showed that not only were the characters trying to see if they could not do the same thing over and over again, but the island itself was trying to see if it could not do the same thing over and over again.
Mm.
There's this circularity to the hatch and the island and babies being taken and people being killed and all this stuff that happened over and over throughout its history.
Hmm.
And the
Which I think is
thing,
a fascinating concept. I mean, we do see that reflected in real history, and that it repeats itself a lot.
well, it goes with Lost's very Eastern philosophy too. This kind
Mm.
of karma until you break free from it, sort of thing. And you get the impression, at least, or you can, that the end is that they broke some of the old cycles with Hurley and various other things.
Yeah.
So that's probably more Lost than anyone wanted to hear, like 4 months after it's over. But
Probably.
don't worry, we will not
Well,
always talk about Lost. Just every other episode.
we'll try anyway. Um, going back to your book,
Yes.
did you wind up, because I know at one point you were thinking about changing the point of view before the end. Did you wind up doing that, or you were thinking about writing? You actually, for a while, you were thinking about doing alternate endings, almost
I
trying to two different
I
styles.
did the second to last chapter. Is a chapter without the main character, and I think the only chapter in the entire book without the main character. Um,
Wow.
and it's kind of my way of kind of doing little tiny story arcs or finishing off little tiny story arcs for the rest of the 12 guys running around with them, well, guys and girls. And I think I'm going to keep the point of view shift. I have to read in context, and I haven't had a chance to do that yet. And it's kind
Right.
of different, but I think it works. And again, I can change my mind tomorrow on that.
Uh-huh.
And the thing is, this point of view change, I've planned since, somewhere very early on in the process. So this is the only book I've ever written an entire outline for, which I also
Really?
blame. I blame that for also why I didn't finish it, because I got bored with it.
Yeah, you don't usually work off of
No,
outlines.
I normally wing it. I mean, I'll have some vague overarching outline in my head, but I'm very organic in my style, which makes it amazing that like Girl Called Snort, which was I ended this year, that I actually pulled off what I thought was a decent ending.
Well, Girl Called Snort, you had the advantage. You had set yourself. You did several story arcs. That's a very kind of traveling story,
It is. It's
where
very
she.
Odyssey oriented.
Yeah, so that might have helped you because you had gotten the habit of finishing one arc. So then it was just kind of a matter of a big arc to kind of finish it all.
That's true, and that it did help quite a bit. And I always knew. Speaking of endings, I always knew that Girl Called Snort's basically about this girl wants to get her human face. So the end has to either be she gets the face or she doesn't get the face. So it's either a happy ending or a sad ending, or you thought it was going to be sad, but it's actually happy ending. If you want to say like she doesn't get her face, but she learned something about herself, sort of junk. Uh,
That's cynical.
but so now you could be like Michael Straczynski and give the end you thought everyone wanted halfway through the series and switch everything. But
That's true. Well, or the Lord of the Rings ending,
the Lord of the
where
Rings ending, yeah,
they won, but then they got a whole bunch of other stuff to take care
where you have the longest like resolution known to man,
of.
which works. I mean, it works fabulous. I always like to have my resolution as close as humanly possible to the climax,
Mm.
but I don't know why. I think I just like to end it as soon as possible. The other thing I had to do reading through my ending is make sure there's enough breathing space at the end that you feel like you get to enjoy the ending long
Yeah,
enough.
so it's not like, okay, the bad guy is vanquished and now we have to say goodbye to all these people without really finding out what they did afterwards.
Exactly, because I don't want to extend it too long, but I want to give it that breathing room. So that'll be my trick over the next couple weeks.
Nice. Coming from a filmmaking perspective, I was thinking about alternate endings, which is one reason why I was asking you about that. It seems like writers have alternate endings a lot less than, say, big budget films do.
Why is that?
Well, I think part of it is that there's so much more money involved in a film production that the producers often are coming from a very business perspective. So they do audience test screenings to try to see which will work. And I mean, that's part of it. Part of it is just the business end of it. But there may be something more to it from a directing standpoint too. Which I'm not entirely certain of.
That just seems strange to me because it seems like that there should only be. I mean, if you set up your characters well and everything, there should only be one ending that fits. I would think.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, there's such a difference sometimes between what's in your script and then what's on the screen.
That's true.
Uh,
That's true.
the other day, I was taking a study break at the library and I was wandering through some of the shelves and I found a screenplay for It's a Wonderful Life.
Okay.
Nice thing about, again, at a film school, we've got a lot of more screenplays than most people would. And anyway, I was thumbing through it and I found toward the end, the part where after George Bailey has, he's been saved and he's running through town yelling "Merry Christmas" to everyone, and he stops and says hi to Mr. Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And in the script, after he does that, there's a short scene between Mr. Potter and Clarence. Actually, Clarence shows up and Mr. Potter's like, "Who are you?" And Clarence kind of proceeds to scold him, basically, kind of Ebenezer Scrooge style, about what a lonely man he actually is, and that's about it. And then I got curious. I looked up on Wikipedia, and I guess in another version there was a part where it had been found out what Potter had done, and then he got he basically got his comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine how from one perspective as a screenwriter you would want that, especially 1940s. The bad guy always has to come to justice somehow.
Yeah.
Well, usually. But in retrospect, doing something like that where we kind of say, haha, Mr. Potter, it would kind of interrupt the flow of George's, the big joy rush, basically, from getting his life back and then all the people coming and helping him out. It would kind of, I think it would have interrupted the flow of that to suddenly break away to this other guy getting arrested or something.
Well, that makes actually I'd heard that before. Not that particular story, but that when the screenplay look good, and then when you put it on film, it completely interrupts the motion or the flow of the film. And I guess maybe that's the difference between movies and books. Books, you don't have such an emotional I mean, there's not this sense of emotion pushing you through per se. You read it in a more analytical sense. I mean, there's emotion still, but movies, you're hoping to keep one solid emotion through a variety of scenes and build upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember reading somewhere that the writers of the newest Star Trek movie had a lot more scenes with the bad guy in the original script, but the more they edited, the more they figured out the movie was really about Kirk and Spock, and like cut out massive amounts of the bad guy.
Yeah, films can change a lot in the editing room. It's really an amazing process.
I enjoyed editing a lot when I did my few films because you can really make it. That's where you put it together.
Yeah, that's where it takes its shape, and some editors actually view the screenplay as kind of and the footage as kind of just the raw material that the film has yet to really take its shape until after they've worked with it.
I can see that as a valid way of viewing film.
I think directors would have an issue with that, but that's
I think George Lucas basically loves the cutting room.
yeah. Yeah, I heard Mark Hamill actually one time describe him kind of as a tinker, kind of like how someone likes to tinker with cars, and
Mm-hmm.
he said Lucas always really enjoyed tinkering, tweaking this and that, and
I can see. I'm sure some of the Star Wars fans wish he would stop, but
yeah,
yeah, I can see that about him. But that's all I got.
cool.
That's
Well,
our
I think that's
catchphrase.
that's all we got.
That's all we got.
Well, let's move on to soundtrack.
What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?
The soundtrack is Tim and I like music, especially video game remixes that you can find free online. We're always sending each other recommendations, so we thought we'd share some music we've been listening to with our audience. Hopefully, once we figure out copyrights, we can do some original music too that we own. I picked out today for my soundtrack choice, largely because of the title. I like the piece of music, but the title works with this podcast. It's from Breath of Fire 4. It's called Endings, Beginnings, and One Hell of a Trip.
I love the title.
It's a great title, and it's it's remixed by another soundscape, very electronic-y and fun.
You better say another soundscape is the name of the remixer.
Oh yeah, did I not say that?
The way you said it is like it's mixed by another soundscape.
Oh.
Like, whoa. That sounds confusing.
The name
of the remixer
is Another Soundscape, who does a lot of really neat stuff.
All right, let's take a listen.
Hopefully you enjoyed that.
Time for our next segment, our take.
On Tales. In this section, we'll talk about just things we've watched, seen, read that we feel like talking about.
Could be movies, could be a book, could be anything. Actually, I have no idea what Nick is going to talk about, and vice versa.
Yeah,
So
that's true. So
this
you
week-
start this time. I talked about my book last time.
Okay, today I thought we'd talk about the jazz singer.
Oh, I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
Yeah, I just saw this recently for my History of American Cinema class, and it's a noteworthy film. It's largely credited for being the first motion picture with sound. Or
Okay.
The first full length motion picture with sound. Part of the film is silent, but part of it does have sound. Its basic story is about a Jewish boy who is interested in singing jazz, or a very white version of jazz. Honestly, the music in the movie doesn't sound much like jazz from what I've heard. But anyway, this is against his father's wishes because his father is a very conservative Jew and thinks jazz is of the devil or something.
But I want to be a dentist. No, you must be a toy maker.
What's that Monty Python skit?
When he,
The poet.
Oh,
the poet
he's
is
a
the
poet.
father, and his son wants to work in the coal mines.
yeah, exactly. The dad's the poet and the writer, and he's so discouraged. This point, and his son just wants to be a coal miner. Wish his dad would get over it. Yeah.
It's awesome. But this is the more traditional. It's very kind of, the story is very new versus old, new world versus old world, and so all the singing portions are in sound, and there's some talking that'll be mixed in with it, but then it will go into silent for other parts of it. My thoughts, honestly. If it wasn't for the historical significance of it, I'm not sure that the story would really be remembered all that much today. It wasn't really a new story even when it was made.
When was it made? Like
in 1927.
27. Okay.
1927, and the sound revolution followed very shortly after that. By 19, I mean, it was a very successful movie in its day. People were amazed by the sound innovations, and really only took about 2 or 3 years after that. By 1930, most theaters had switched over to sound.
Okay.
Switched over to talkies. Because the industry had known this was coming for a while. It was just kind of, it took Warner Brothers to figure out how to do it and do it successfully before it became implemented. But anyway, from a modern perspective, the story is got some problems. It's a bit melodramatic at times. There's some plot holes. But they did do a number of things effectively. Like, for instance, I imagine during the sound bits, it would be quite tempting to just leave the camera on the singer the whole time, just to show off their new trick.
That's true, yeah.
But they do cut away from the singer. They show other people, their reactions. In another one where it's the Jewish father singing, he's a Jewish cantor, I should say, so he actually sings important songs for the ceremonies, and they show him singing in the temple while the boy is going back home and getting his stuff to run away from home. And so, I mean, they're showing simultaneous action in another area. And then one of the most dramatic uses of sound in it is at one point when after he's been gone for a long time, he leaves home for about 20 years, then comes back and to visit his mother, and he's playing piano for him, and they're singing a neat song then, and the father comes in, and after staring in horror for a minute, the father yells, "Stop!" And all the music cuts out. The piano playing cuts out. The normal silent film accompaniment doesn't start in for a little while, so there's just this very dramatic moment where they're all kind of looking at each other, and the audience is like, "Oh, what will happen now?" So they really use the innovation of sound very effectively. But again, if it wasn't for historical significance, I'm not sure the story would stand on its own very well.
Okay. So I don't necessarily have to see it. I can just hear you talk about
it. Kind of. Well, I mean, if you want to see, like I said, I mean, it's worth seeing if you're interested in film history.
Yeah, which I am vaguely, but I got so many movies to watch. I'll probably put that on the bottom.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry. There are other ones that That might be more important.
But it is amazing though. Sound plays such a large role now in
Yeah.
movies. I mean, not just sound effects. I mean, but the way you can play with music and sound effects and various other things is just. I mean, it's second nature now. You don't even think about it. It sneaks in your brain.
Hmm.
And
And
you're not
really,
paying attention.
it's come down to the point when student filmmakers often rely too much on sound and dialogue to tell the story, and professors often have to kind of remind them how to use just the images and facial expressions and lighting and cinematography and all that stuff to tell a story. Because I mean, originally motion pictures were all about just that, it's telling stories with minimum amount of words.
So not like the Love Life of Wallace P. Fitzgerald.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. Wallace P. Fitzgerald was a film I made my senior year that Nick wrote for me.
It should have been a play.
Yeah, it's a great screenplay, great story, but so much dialogue in that.
There's a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
Quite funny. Is it on YouTube?
Not yet. I keep meaning to.
Okay, when it's on YouTube, we'll have to tell you guys where it is.
Yeah.
It is entertaining.
Yeah, it is entertaining. People have enjoyed it. It's not quite to the par of the Taylor trilogy, which is a series of films that Nick did while he was still an undergrad. But it's a spiritual brother to it, I think.
Sometime I need to write the play of Wallace P. Fitzgerald.
I
think
think
it'll make a great play.
I agree. It would. It's a really fun romantic comedy solely from a guy's perspective.
And a marriage happens very, very quickly.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I got.
That's all you got.
Yeah. That's becoming our catchphrase very quickly.
So I had a couple of things I could talk about, but even though I'm kind of behind the curve from you and some other people, Tim, I just finished season 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yay!
Which was very good. Which Toph is completely awesome.
Jeez. Oh yeah, because isn't at the end.
She's now a metal bender.
Yeah, and metal bending is amazing.
No, but what I found so interesting watching it, two episodes before the end, they all split up, and I was kind of hoping there'd be like 4 different battles at the end. But they all came together, and it was still very, very cool battles. I wasn't disappointed, but I like having lots of plates spinning simultaneously. Tim knows this. The more chaos I can get going, the better.
Oh yes.
Which is why I always have so many characters. Speaking of spinning plates, Inception is awesome. Second off, well, the other thing I found interesting was that there were like some heavy, speaking of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back overtones to the last 2 episodes. What I mean is, so
yeah, go into that.
Aang is with the guru trying to master his avatar state, like this special. If you haven't seen the cartoon, is this special state where he's uber powerful, like a trance from Final Fantasy IX.
Or like any anime character.
Or any anime character who just like goes nuts. Berserk.
Super Saiyan or yeah.
So anyways, he has to give up, he's going through all these things, and it's very Buddhist, kind of giving up his attachments to the world. And he can't, and while he's in the middle of trying to, he has this vision about Katara, his girl basically. I'm not yet, but going to be.
Love interest.
In danger. And he's like, I have to leave, and the mentor's like, no, you can't. If you leave now, you'll never be completely trained. Which is very Yoda.
Yeah, that's true.
Very like, you can't go to Cloud City, you have to stay here.
That's a good point. I remember watching that and feeling like it was very familiar, but I'm not sure if I ever connected it to Empire Strikes Back.
And I don't mind it referring to Empire Strikes Back, because it's a very archetypal and very Eastern sort of idea. I really do enjoy then at the end that even when he tried to give up his attachments, it backfired on him.
Mm-hmm. Very Luke.
Yes, and because I'm glad they didn't go with the very Jedi idea of you can't have any attachments at all, which drove Anakin insane, basically.
Yeah, that really is kind of what really weakened the Jedi Order in the end.
So isn't it interesting for them tackling the same thing, and at least how I read it, not having watched season 3, come down on the fact that attachment's good, that love is better than power and perfection. Basically, what the uncle Iroh
Mm-hmm.
Basically said, look, perfection's overrated, love's awesome. He's Iroh's completely awesome.
He really is.
And then you just have them completely defeated. Everything's horrible, and they leave, which is very Empire Strikes Back too.
Yeah. I remember my friend describing, before I had seen it, describing the end of season 2, and it's just like, well, crap, what now? Kind of feeling at the end.
But I love the character. Tim got me into this show. I love the characters, love the action, love the humor. I mean, it is very, very well done.
It's a wonderful show all around. I mean, the final fight in that season is cool, but in some ways, I'm a bigger fan of the fight when they battle their way in to see the Emperor.
Yeah, that is a fabulous fight.
Particularly since it had been kind of built up to that with all because they're in the city called Ba Sing Se, which is very, very kind of conspiracy stuff going on, and which hampers the characters' goals for a while. So when they finally get to break past that, it's really, really vindictive.
And can I tell you, there needs to be more primetime TV shows who can ramp up tension towards the season's finale like Avatar does.
Mm.
I mean, their plot arcs are fabulous, and for some reason, TV thinks that audiences can't handle long, heavy plot arcs. But
Yeah.
so they're like, but these kids, these 12-year-old kids, they can handle it.
Well, sometimes it does seem like there is more leeway for animated series.
I think that's why they test a lot of stuff because first off, it's for kids, so you don't have to. Well, they're a little more addictive to things too. I mean, they're going to follow it religiously, and your primetime TV isn't necessarily people are just turning it on. If they're not interested, they're not going to watch it the next week.
Yeah, that's one reason why you have so many procedurals.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to trying out some of these new TV shows.
For the new season? I have not followed much yet.
Oh, no, I haven't watched. I'm going to try the event. I hope it's a very complicated story, but it probably won't be. I'm longing for some horribly complicated TV show.
Yeah, makes us kind of unique, I think. The more complicated, right now, the better.
The only thing I have right now is Doctor Who, which not so much complicated, just insane.
And very creative.
Very, very creative. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But yeah, I'll probably watch the event. I would like to see how that goes, and
if Zach recommends anything, I might try it. He watches about every new show that is worth watching, at least for a couple episodes.
Oh, before we leave Avatar, real quick. As far as long-term character arcs go, Zuko is just amazing.
Zuko's a great character. They've done fabulous with him.
Particularly in the second season. The first season, in some ways, he is a little stiff. But the second season, when he's basically cut off from his nation entirely. He doesn't have any power anymore. He's a fugitive. And then slowly kind of getting a feeling for what all the other nations think of the Fire Nation. And you're waiting for him to turn to the good side. And he's so close. He is so very, very close. And misses.
Yeah, and I think it's just fascinating that what's in theory a kid's show spends so much time on making a very complex bad character, basically. Mm-hmm. Because Azula, is just bad. She's just evil.
Yeah.
But Zuko is very complex, and he's one of those characters. And I like characters like this that they're always kind of gruff or mean, but every once in a while they smile just a little bit, and you feel like that means a lot.
Yeah.
Aang, if he smiles, he smiles. I mean, that's like his normal state of being. When he's upset. I mean, Aang has a wide range of emotion. Most of the main characters do.
Yeah.
But, Zuko, because he is so kind of boxes himself into one sort of personality, it's interesting to see him test other types of ways of reacting.
It's true. Yeah. Again, wonderful show. We'll move on, but
yeah.
If you've never seen any Avatar: The Last Airbender, by all means, go see it. I don't care if you have prejudices against anime or cartoons in general, but it's just a very intelligent, wonderful show.
All right, next is
Crackpot's Corner. Crackpot's Corner, this is just where we throw out some random ideas that be cool to see happen. It may or may not ever happen, but it's fun to dream. So I started last time. You start this one.
Oh, I start this time. Okay. This is one. I have ideas that have been in my head for a long time. This is one of them, and probably won't work. I would like to write a full-length motion picture animated that's basically 2 hours of wacky races. I have a thing for crazy car race shows. I need to see. Dad has this movie. What is it? Someone in their Jolly Jalopies. I don't know.
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I can't think of the name.
He says I need to go watch it. But
describe Wacky Races a little bit for people who
yeah,
don't know.
Wacky Races is what Hanna-Barbera, and it's just like it's a race, and I don't know, it's cars sometimes, blimps, boats. I mean, all kinds of vehicles.
I think they had one series where they're in outer space.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that one. But he's always doing crazy things. It's basically like a giant pod race.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen episode 1 of Star Wars, which is a theme today. But what I love is the frantic energy that if you write it right. You have 12 characters, all with quirky personalities, all struggling to win, and all kinds of double dealings and personality conflicts and stuff like that. My idea is it has to be animated partly because I want to do kind of crazy stuff with it. I would love to have it so it's an intergalactic transdimensional race. So it starts out, and you got all these, all kinds of different people, and they have all their crazy ships. But the trick is, you're racing through across the planet, but every ship's hooked up to this, I don't know, dimensional something that randomly it'll flip all the ships into somewhere else. So you have to be ready for any terrain, any sort of antagonistic monster.
So you could be in a desert 1 minute, and then suddenly next minute you're underwater.
Exactly. So you have these crazy ships that have to, deal with all this, and you have, fathers and sons working together, and the person who's won 10,000 times. And I have these two sportscasters, who's the one's always very bombastic and talking. The other one always tries to get word in edgewise and can't.
That's fantastic.
And I think at one point there's some law broken, so you have them pulled in front of the trial. And I think one time they end up in the middle of a war zone. And I haven't even wrote any ideas down really. Just I would love to try to see if you can how fast you can keep action going for 2 hours.
And who would you want the audience to be rooting for? I guess that would be another interesting question.
Well, I think you'd have to have at least 1 or 2 character arcs that I think there'd probably be a love story in there between two of the racers. But you'd have to have some personality arc so that even if only one person can win, but you have, speaking of endings, emotional endings that are happy for other people even when they don't win. They get the girl, they survive, they whatever. They just they didn't come in dead last, that sort of stuff.
Maybe one of them is this really 99-year-old geezer that's just trying, like the old people who do marathons. They just want the experience. He's just out for kicks.
I channeled part of this in if you go to my website, the nickhayden.digitalnovelist.com, go to the snapshots, which is all the flash fictions. The one called, what is it called? It's about it seems like a pod race, but it's it was born out of this idea.
Yeah, I remember that one.
What is it called?
I don't know.
Some racing one. Well, we'll try to put in the show notes or something.
Okay. I could look it up real quick.
Okay, look it up real quick. But I just have never done it, partly because no one's going to make at this point, I'm not going to get an animated film made. I'm lucky to get a book published and sold to more than 10 people. So, but it's going to stick it back there. I've always loved the frantic. I think that's why I love another movie very few people I think have seen is Radioland Murders.
Yeah.
Just crazy for most of the movie.
Well, I've told you this before, but another movie you really need to see that's in that genre is Speed Racer.
See, yes, you've said numerous times that you go see Speed Racer. So
yeah, it's really just like that. It focuses. The main character is very obviously Speed Racer himself, but there's a whole bunch of other wacky characters and antagonists and double dealings and crazy cars. That the Wachowski brothers who directed it, they came up with with a term for the kind of action that they had in their races. It was called car foo, which just kind of gives you an idea of all these really futuristic looking cars just kind of jumping over and around each other and spinning around and defying physics
Nice.
and like I think I told you before, that really the best way to describe it is Mario Kart on crack. It's very colorful and kind of acid trippy, really.
Nice. Anyone, if you listen to podcasts long, you'll learn that there's two things that have been kind of stuck in my head. This frantic energy, which I think I originally got from this cartoon, which no one's ever seen, called Puss in Boots Travels Around the World. Where there's all kinds of, it's a race basically around the world between Puss in Boots and his friend Hog something, and this other guy who's trying to stop him. And then clock towers. I always wonder, I need to write a book that ends in a clock tower.
Yep. I've done a short story with a church tower.
That's cool. Yeah, that's true. So what's your crazy idea today?
Well, let me throw out the story you were talking about is called Photo Finish.
Okay, that's right.
It's photo number 17 in your list of snapshots or flash fictions, which are really, really short stories.
Yeah, they're like less than 1,000 words. Most times less than 700 words.
Well, I'm trying to decide if I want to talk about both of my crackpot ideas or save one. I think I'll save, because we're probably running a little long here. I think I'll save the more realistic one for later, and I'll go with a way out there one that I thought of just recently. If you've ever seen the show Mystery Science Theater 3000, which if you haven't, it's a show about a guy who's trapped up in the satellite. This mad scientist is forcing him and his robots to watch really, really bad movies in hopes of finding a movie so awful that it will drive humanity insane. The queue to go into the theater, they do segments in the satellite, but then when the queue to go into the theater and watch more of the movie is there's a siren goes off and they go, "We got movie sign!" And so then they go in and watch the movie and make fun of it, as you know, they do riffs and you see them watching it. And it's a fun show. But this movie sign thing, it occurred to me recently, what if, I think this would be a great addition to film school if we had an instituted movie sign. Where all of a sudden, you won't know, it could be at any part of the day, suddenly there's a siren that goes off in the building. Everyone goes, "Movie sign!" And we all rush into the theater to see whatever movie has been decreed for the day.
That would be great. It's like siesta, but with movies.
It'd be, and particularly since, I'm assuming that our faculty wouldn't be trying to drive us insane with really bad movies. It'd be something worth watching, and it could be a complete surprise.
I think they should have town-wide movie signs.
That would be awesome. And everyone could be rushed. I mean, it'd be a free event. Otherwise, it'd be like extortion or something.
Well, and $10 for popcorn.
Yeah, $10 chip in for popcorn and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, a random day, you might be in the middle of a phone call, and it's, "We got movie sign!" And everyone rushes off to the movie theater to see what's to be seen.
I'm not, some people might say that might really hurt the economy, but I think it might help stress levels.
Well, in Mexico they do siestas.
Yeah, I think we need to start a petition for movie sign.
I agree.
Weekly movie sign. We'll do it once a week for now. We can move up to once a day later.
There you go. Yeah, that might be easier. And plus, just think about how much more film literate our population would be.
That's true.
I mean, most people just kind of watch the very, most pop culture-y things without really, expanding their horizons much. And I'm that way to a degree, and I've admitted before. There's a lot of classic and independent films that I like to see, but I very rarely go out of my way to watch them. When I'm watching it for a class, like The Jazz Singer, for instance, might not have ever watched that except for class. And while it's maybe not on a must-see list, as we talked about earlier, for me, as a learning about film history, it was definitely worth the watch. So, be a fun way to institute to promote film literacy that way.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we must implement it immediately.
So I thought that's a good crackpot corner. I think that's a good place to wrap up the podcast.
Yeah, that's all we've got.
Yep, that's. People are going to get sick of us saying that now. All right, we got one more soundtrack to close out our time together, and this is one that I picked out.
Do we want to do the the email and stuff first, and then just leave off with the music?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's give some of the contact information. Our email address is derailedtrains@gmail.com.
Send your praises and your thanks and your bomb threats to us. Also, questions and suggestions would work as well.
Nick is married. I'm an eligible single, so feel free to send that kind of information.
I think that next time we need to have our whole thing needs to be romance for our story school.
That could be an interesting topic.
Yeah.
Well, we'll think about that. Our podcast will probably be on a bi-weekly basis for now, just to make it more manageable. Because I am in grad school and my time is a valuable commodity at the moment.
Yeah, I'm married and have a kid and work and
That's right.
do some other stuff and trying to finish this book. So
That's right. Yeah. So good luck. Next time we'll give you a little more update about various projects we're working on. You heard a bit about Nick's book, The Squire, and I'll talk about some of the mainly school stuff that I'm working on, but I'll share a bit of that. In the meantime, my soundtrack choice for tonight, as we ride off into the sunset, is a remix from the game Sunset Riders.
great game.
Yeah, from Super Nintendo, and I believe it was arcade game.
That's why I play on the arcade more than anywhere else.
Yeah, and this is remix by Dr. Manhattan, and it's called Mr. Pink Poncho's Western Rock Band. So with that, Nick, you got your cowboy hat?
I got my cowboy hat. Oh, I got sombrero actually. It's the
Oh.
same one Aaron used in Tailored Trilogy.
Nice. And I got my boots. I got my spurs. I think we're ready to ride.
All right.
So this is Tim,
This is Nick.
and we will see you next time.
Adios.
Ride 'em, cowboy.